Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Just kidding. This is Alex Schmeeken, one of the artist residents at the Ceramics Center in spring 2020, and today I'm going to show you guys how to trim a big bowl. This is for my Tuesday intermediate wheel class. We're learning how to throw big things. So right now you can see that I am feeling how thick the bottom is, trying to gauge how much clay I can actually trim off. As you'll see later in the video, I actually end up putting it on the wheel and trimming it twice, but that's okay, that's how it goes sometimes. And then here I'm also forgetting and remembering to feel the sides as well, since this isn't a bowl that I'm piercing, so don't worry about it needing to be super thin, but I just like to kind of keep stuff nice and light. Alright, and then now I'm just going to flip it over. It's always good to have a bat underneath when you flip things. It's just easier than trying to manhandle it. And yeah, alright, so then now I'm just kind of eyeballing where it is in the center, just so I can get it not to wobble around too much. I always like to just use trail my finger along, notice how my elbows are braced, and that way I can feel if there's a gap between the bowl and my finger, then I stop the wheel and scooch it. I always kind of scooch it up and to the left. But you can kind of figure out what works for you, what makes that gap smaller, and then I just kind of let my finger trail around, not necessarily like pressing into the bowl, just kind of holding my finger in one spot and letting the bowl meet me where it's at. It can be kind of hard to explain. Maybe I'll do another video going into the specifics, but I know I kind of confused my class last time, so. But yeah, so then you want to roll out some little sausages and secure your bowl down. I always curve them a little bit so that they'll kind of fit my bowl, and then I want to just smear down into the wheel. I don't want to press into the pot because I don't want to warp anything. I want things to just be kind of like little door stops. I don't want it to press into the pot and then I'll have a little triangle guy, so I don't want that to happen. But yeah, so you just kind of roll them out, press them in, nothing too crazy. Alright, and then to start off, I'm going to grab a couple trimming tools. I pretty much use like 3 different ones. I have my mud tools. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's like Trimall tool. Well, that one is just a regular loop tool. And then there's a small loop tool, and then my mud tools one. I don't remember what it's called, but I really like that one. I like using the curved end. And I just start off using like the big part of the curved end and just kind of taking off, just getting some clay off, just taking off the bulk of it. And I always kind of start just to the inside because I don't want to necessarily trim down the foot too much in terms of like having the height of the foot ring. So I just kind of focus on kind of going along the radius of the piece, going from the outside to the inside and back out again. And at this point you really want to also remember to have your elbows braced, and then notice how I'm holding the tool. I have my left hand is kind of resting in the center of the pot, and then that connects to the trimming tool, which is being held in my right hand, which is then both arms are braced. You kind of want to be like a little D-Rex and have both your arms braced so that you can hold your tool really steady, and that way if your bowl is kind of going up and down, you can level it off without letting it kind of move your tool up and down with you. Though sometimes, that happens a little bit, but and then now I'm kind of curving out to the corner and the edge, and I kind of want to have kind of a round foot that kind of looks like there's just this coil of clay sitting on the outside, but you'll be able to see in a little bit how I kind of refine that. So I'm just kind of taking a little bit of clay away so you can kind of start to see that little rounded shape sticking out. And then in a little bit I'll switch tools, but for now I'm just getting off the bulk of the clay. Alright, so here I sped it up to 3 times, so don't be alarmed, I don't actually trim this fast. That'd be cool though. But yeah, so like I said, I'm just taking off a bunch of clay. I made the bottom on this one pretty thick because when you're pulling the wire underneath, when you're removing it from the bat that you threw on, sometimes the wire can tend to kind of curve up and could even go through the bottom of your piece. So I throw my bowls pretty thick so that I don't have to have too many losses when it comes to that kind of stuff. And then here you can see I'm trimming with my little loop tool now, and I kind of pointed to the little corner of it. And again, notice how close to the edge of the tool I'm holding it. That's really important. If you hold the tool like too far up and it gets kind of wobbly in your hand. So now you can see I'm really refining that little ring. All of a sudden it's kind of appearing on the inside, and then I'm working on the outside. So now you can actually kind of see what my foot is intended to look like. Yeah, so I'm just kind of using those corners of the more square end of it just to get a really nice shape. You'll notice that my bowl is starting to wobble a little bit. Sometimes when I am starting and stopping my wheel to get those scraps cleaned off, if you stop too suddenly, it can kind of, the momentum of your bowl can kind of jolt it free from the little sausages that are keeping it on there. So make sure to stop your bowl slowly if you're doing that. So that's something that I learned from making this video. So yeah, so now I just kind of was rotating that tool around, just getting a nice curved shape, just taking a little bit of stuff off that foot ring. I was talking to my students last week when I was doing the demo on how to throw. This is actually like the biggest bowl for a nesting bowl set. You can see the other one, 2 ones above my head actually. And we were talking about kind of how to make it be a nice like step. If say all the bowls are stacked together, and you can kind of go from the biggest one to the smallest one, and do you want it to be kind of a nice like curve, like up or flat or down? You kind of want to be able to measure that height and go down in like 1 centimeter increments or something like that. But that also involves making sure you're trimming pretty uniformly across the bowls. So basically the solution that I came up with was not to trim too much on the top of the foot ring, because we don't want it to be too short. So now I'm using my big loop tool, and basically I just use that just to kind of smooth everything out. I find that this guy, it does trim off stuff obviously. It's not quite as sharp as the Mud Tools one, or doesn't quite get as much clay off as I would like, so I usually just use it for polishing things up and taking a little bit off. And of course, if your bowl's a little bit on the softer side, you want to be careful when you're pressing into the center, because I have dented in plenty of bowls, so you want to be cautious about that. And then here I'm tapping the center. You can kind of hear it change in pitch, so just throughout your trimming session, you can practice just kind of tapping in the center and just see if you notice how it changes. I can't remember. I feel like it gets kind of higher pitched because it starts to sound more and more like a drum, or maybe it just gets louder because there's this really kind of echo from the reverberation of the bottom. Of course, you don't want to tap it too much because, again, we don't want to cave things in. But so here you can tell that basically I decided to keep trimming stuff off, so I actually went back with the little tool. So which sometimes kind of I'll do that. It'll be kind of like a false start, but that's okay. So then here is where I'm kind of readjusting my bowl, because I was noticing it's doing a little hula dance, like I was talking about, from stopping my wheel too suddenly. So then I'm just securing my little dudes, my little clay lugs on there, just so that they're a little bit tighter. Though I want to be careful not to crush the sides of my bowl. Yep, so I'm just kind of slowly taking off a little bit, because I'm always kind of worried about carving, making it a little bit too thin and denting in the center, so I'm kind of just gently tapping on it to see how the sound is progressing. But like I told you guys earlier, I actually ended up taking this guy off the wheel and then retrimming it, but I'll speed up that part a lot just so you can see what I did, but not have to be watching this video forever, of course. Though we all have a lot of time on our hands right now, so yeah. Okay, so here I'm getting up to get a sponge and a spray bottle. You can also just use a bucket of water or something, but that's just what I feel like doing, I guess. So I'm just wetting my sponge, and then I'm going to be trailing that along the foot ring and the bottom edge of my piece. And this just helps smooth things out. You want to be careful not to over sponge when you have kind of groggy clay. This is just the Studio Reclaim, iFire Reclaim, so there's a little bit of grog, but it does smooth out nicely. And then I just take the little, it's kind of like a ball pointed tool. Here you go. And I just use that to carve in my initials. Alright, and then I peel off the little lugs. You want to be careful not to press those into your pot. Just peel them off. Yeah, and then I will just save them for my next pieces. And then I grab that, and then I make a little sandwich and pick up the bottom one and then do a little flip. And then here I'm going to kind of evaluate and see, you know, how does it actually feel underneath. Well, of course, first clean up the gunk off the rim. You know, that's important. And then now I'm going to kind of gently pick it up and kind of feel, I'm like, well, kind of thick. So at this point I'm going to put it back on and take a little bit more off. You know, better safe than sorry. The only like issue that people have with putting it back on is sometimes it's hard to get it centered exactly the way it was, and then it can kind of mess up your foot ring. But things will be okay. And if you're wondering what I just did, I was just moving my B-clay recycling bucket because I was getting reclaimed scraps in it. And as you might have noticed, scraps are flying everywhere. So it's really important to sweep up your space after you do this, otherwise you're going to be crunching around little scraps all day. So basically I am just kind of doing the thing like I was talking about. You can really see how it's off center and hula hooping. So I'm like, oh, hold on, this is not centered. Giving it just little scooches. Whenever you're centering things, you always want to just be very subtle and don't move it like super far. Just give it just a little scoochy and it'll get there eventually because you don't want to overcorrect. So just notice how I'm holding my right hand with my other hand even just to keep it steady and just moving it just a hair. And then now you can see it's really not hula hooping as much anymore. Okay, and you guys will remember from my class with this batch of reclaim that I had wedged up from the pug mill that I was using, there was a bunch of sponge parts in it, so that's fun. So I just dug that out because I don't know how that would do in the kiln. It would probably just burn, but you know, now I have a little boo-boo. But I'm gonna patch that up at the end, so it's all good. So now we're speeding up just to get through trimming round 2. It's basically the same thing, just going back and forth. At this point in trimming, I like to just stick to my little loop tool. I find that it's nice and sharp and gets the job done. Just kind of really deepening that foot. And just kind of, you know, periodically slowing down my wheel to take the scraps off. That's the nice thing about the Mud Tools tool, though, is that you don't get all those little scraps stuck in the loop, because it's kind of more open. But I also find that it kind of gives more, like, puts more grooves in your piece, so I like to go with this guy to refine. Sorry, this guy being the little loop tool. And then now switching just to the big loop tool, just to smooth it all out and just kind of get it nice and even. Alright, so I'm patching this up with water and just a little bit of clay, smoothing it out. And then now you can really see that nice defined foot ring. Things are pretty much done, just doing my signature. And you can see that it kind of looks like the bolt kind of just has this nice continuous curve with this like ring of clay sitting on top of that. I feel like that looks really nice and clean. So here's a little close-up. Thanks for coming! You can find photos of my work on my Instagram, which is @cabinfever. And here's a photo of what the bowls look like when they're all trimmed and all together.